Welcome to Classical Question Time. I'm Josh Wignall, you don't know who I am, and I'm chairing the debate. It's great to see so many people here for what should be a fascinating evening. I'd like to thank you all for coming to watch this such a busy half term. I'd also like to thank the party representatives here who are going to introduce themselves in a minute, who have also very kindly donated their time to come here tonight. It's great to have you all here. Before we start the debate itself, I just want to say a little bit about why I organised Question Time and the format tonight's going to take. So about half of 18 to 24-year-olds who vote, only about half of 18 to 24-year-olds voted in the last general election, which I think is a worryingly low number. It means policies that we want don't get as much consideration by the government, since we aren't as important in election time. I think there's two reasons why people don't vote. First one is that young people don't feel like they're affected by what MPs do, and so are a bit disconnected from the system. Shouldn't be the case, but it is unfortunately the truth. And the second one is there isn't a great deal of education for voters about what people and parties stand for. This is something I'd like to change, and hopefully tonight you'll hear something that will inspire you to vote.
Will legal aid be reinstated, or in the year of the 800th anniversary of Magna Carta, will the last lot continue to be denied access to the justice system?
I'd like to start off by saying that even though there have been cuts made to the legal aid system, the United Kingdom still has one of the largest and most comprehensive sort of legal aid systems in the world. But I am quite concerned about the sort of changes that have been made to the legal aid system. The cuts that have come about are relatively small, and the reform that's taken place has taken away competition from the legal aid system, which is really deeply sort of troubling. And money should be no object in justice when it comes down to it. And I personally believe when we're looking for cuts from the justice system, we should be looking at it from the other end. How can we create a system where less people are going before judges?
I agree with a great point about the comparatively extensive coverage of the British legal aid. But I think it's comes back again to the difference between cuts and reform, and trying to fix the economy, moving from recession to recognition as the world's fastest growing major economy, has caused some really tough decisions within all areas of spending. But reform isn't just about money; it's about being sensible and being fair. And I think it's easy to get caught up in emotive exaggeration about this stuff. We need to remember we need to get value for taxpayers' money. The money that pays for all of this stuff doesn't just come from some kind of pot in the sky belonging to the government. It comes from taxpayers. And lawyers are pretty expensive, In fact, legal aid lawyers are some of the best paid public servants in the country. Routinely, they earn around £500,000 a year, and that's pretty expensive. So again, it's about trying to be sensible. As with a lot of welfare spending, if the net is overextended, then the people are genuinely vulnerable people. It's not necessary to ensure that they're actually going to get the money. So it's about reforming things to make them better.
Yes, well, I have some experience of how the court system works, and legal aid is only a part of how the whole system functions. And in general terms, I would say that the court system functions very inefficiently. And I mean that one could spend the whole evening listing the kind of things that could be done to make it more efficient. In my view, not everybody in the system shares my view, but one simple thing I think is that you could extend magistrates' court powers so that more persons accused of serious offences were dealt with at the first tier court rather than have to be committed to the Crown Court for trial, which is hugely expensive compared to magistrates' courts proceedings. That's just one simple example. I have seen lots of examples of legal aid being abused in the past, where, from my perception, lawyers were kind of arguing points and taking them on appeal and so on, when the outcome of those arguments was of no particular practical benefit to their clients, but it was of particular benefit to them because they would pocket the legal aid fees for arguing the case. So I've no doubt that the legal aid system did need and does need some kind of rationalisation and reform.
Folks, you've heard various positions on human rights, but I would just implore to you all that you, if you don't already, have a think about the principle of universality, because that's what's at the core of all of this. My human rights cannot be different from somebody's in another country, okay? And that's why we have a European Court of Human Rights. That's why the purpose of that court is based on examining breaches of human rights, as originally established by the European Convention of Human Rights. That's its function, to make sure we're all treated the same. So, in a bizarre sense, it's the one thing on this planet that really shouldn't be the subject of nations being able to change things. Perhaps may that be democratically. I guess that's how nations would do it. But if things get changed, it means you lose the principle of universality, and some people's human rights end up quite not as important as other people's, and that is a stalking horse.
Thanks. I'd like to hear from all the parties what plans you have to help small businesses and entrepreneurs.
Key part that answers slightly shorter as well, just so that through everyone's questions.
Well, we're in a strange position where we've got a government that says it's pro-business and it likes business, and yet it's got record numbers of small businesses who are going out of business. And I don't need to tell you this to convince you, because you all live in Durham. You have walked on Durham High Street through the past 5 years, and you've seen lots of beautiful shops go bust, board up their windows, and very often the shops that come in to replace them are discount shops and Poundland. And I'm nothing against those shops, but it says something quite sad about our economy as a whole, that those are the only shops that can really thrive at this point in time. So what I'd really like to press on you today is that Labour is the party of business, and when the Conservatives or the Lib Dems tell you they're the party of business, what they mean is that they are the party of big business. And what we're going to do to help small businesses is the following. First of all, we're going to cut business rates and then keep them down and keep them frozen for the first few years of the next Parliament, to make sure the tax burdens fall on the heavier shoulders. And secondly, if you speak with businesses, small business owners, they will say that only part of the issue is the tax they have to pay. The other issue, that their potential customers don't have the money in their pockets, don't have the disposable income to buy their goods. And that's why the Labour Party is going to tackle this issue from the other end of the problem, by raising wages, and we've promised to raise the minimum wage to £8 in the next Parliament. And it's about time, because at the moment the minimum wage is not a living wage. There's been a brilliant struggle going on with it by the Labour and Green students at Durham University. It's going to become law if the Labour Party wins the next election, and that will have a wonderful transformative effect on small businesses and employment in the small businesses across the country.
I'm not going to speak long on this, because actually I'm in quite agreement with what's just been said. But a few additional items that we would try and do, certainly locally in the city of Durham. I think it's very important that a lot more advice is provided to people with regards to how to start up local businesses, get things going in the first place. This is not a complex area, but it does need demystifying, so people can appreciate that in reality there are very few barriers to starting up your own small business. I think that the council, if I'm elected as MP, I'll certainly be putting pressure on the council to favour local businesses with regards to its major procurement exercises, rather than, as it seems to, go out and with major contracts to large organisations that actually aren't, generally speaking, based in this local area. We'd also look at business rates. I think another key issue for local businesses is access to credit for start-up, and at the moment it's difficult for small businesses to get sufficient funding to get going because of the way that the banking system is operated across the country. So we would like to see a much larger growth of provision of local credit and credit unions and that sort of approach. we'd like to see the introduction of a living wage, which would be £10 an hour.
Supporting small business enterprise is a key commitment of our long-term economic plan. We're doing this by improving infrastructure and also by further lowering jobs taxes. We've already lowered business tax substantially, and building the most competitive corporate tax regime in the G7 as well. And in fact, up here in the North East, we have record numbers of small businesses having been set up since 2010, and almost 1,500 new businesses in the North East since the Conservative-led government came into power. We're also working with businesses in terms of giving people opportunities like apprenticeships. There's about 35,000 new apprenticeship starts in the North East in the last couple of years alone. Backing innovation in enterprise, showing that the North East and indeed the whole country is open for business, and reflecting this in tax is a key part of our long-term economic plan. It's working. We just need to give it a chance to carry it through further in the next Parliament.
Small businesses aren't, I think, the most important part of our economy. That's why Vince Cable in the Coalition has got about setting up the Business Bank to provide credit for businesses, particularly here in the small and medium end of the scale. And they are so important, particularly when they employ just over half of the workforce in the United Kingdom. But we do need to go further, and I do believe that the best thing to do is to remove business rates for small companies that employ no more than employ less than 30 people, because they are the ones that are struggling the most. And they are. And you know, in terms of creating businesses, I think what we also need to do is to build on the sort of northern powerhouses idea, and not take it further north, rather than just Manchester and Hull is what it currently is, and bring it up north, and focus on specialisms such as what's happening with Newcastle University, building on the genetics projects around the Centre of Life, and using the university here in Durham to build on, you know, the sort of science and engineering specialisms that they have, to build up sort of research jobs. And these jobs are long-lasting and genuine jobs. And just to sort of come back about the living wage, the Lib Dems in County Hall have been calling for a living wage for the last 2 years. Why has the Labour Party rejected this?
The Labour Party, I do believe, maybe correct me, but I do believe it now supports a living wage at County Hall. Now, yes, so it does now support a living wage at County Hall. The reason it did not beforehand is because the council were working out of a limited pot of money as a result of cuts made to it by the coalition and by the Lib Dems. So therefore it has to make enormously difficult choices about where to invest the most amount of money. Now, that obviously raises a concern for if you raise the minimum wage across society. Now, the Labour Party has some experience in this, because it was the Labour Party that introduced the minimum wage into this country in the first place in the late 1990s. So that would only apply immediately to the largest companies, and then you'd have transitional periods for smaller businesses and for public authorities with limited budgets to enact the higher living wage. So it's very easy for the Lib Dems in opposition in County Hall to call for a living wage to be paid, but with such severe cuts, it's hard to justify where else the county would make the cuts.
What your views were on the future for energy in the United Kingdom, whether we should invest in renewables, nuclear, etc. Thank you.
Speak for about a minute at most each, please. If we start
UKIP's basic position on energy is that we're opposed to artificial subsidies for things like wind mills, wind farms and so on. We certainly think that fracking should be given a try. It's been used to enormously beneficial effect in the United States and has been a success story over there. And I know there are controversies surrounding it, but most of the states there where it takes place seem to like having it. And it has enabled, it has helped bring down the price of oil from the Middle madness for us not to at least drill some wells and get some experiments going and see how that works out. Some scientists estimate that we have at least 50 years of enough energy in fracking terms to supply the whole country. Just with that one source alone. I don't have the scientific expertise to say, but I think it certainly is something that merits trying. Basically, what we say is, let science and economics determine things rather than prejudice.
I think science is pretty much determining things. We have a massive carbon addiction in the world, and really the only possible plans here is secure renewable energy alongside increasing efficiency and cutting demand. And the Conservative Party is committed to this. Our flagship energy bill, which we brought into place, targets on working towards decarbonisation, increasing renewables, energy market reform, and the use of renewable energy in the UK is up by 60% since 2010. Now, sometimes people like to think of one, like take their favourite renewable energy or something, and wind power is often something which comes up because it's either seen as a hero or a villain. And I don't think it's either of these things. It's only really in the last couple of years that on a good day we've managed to increase the use of wind power to provide up to about just a little bit over 10% of the country's electricity needs, so not just anything but electricity. So what we really need is we need a diverse energy mix, and this means that we need research and development in all kinds of renewable generation technologies. And this is stuff that the North East is great at. I mean, in terms of industry, we've got Nissan, which is the world leader in producing electric cars, and also research. I mean, Durham and Newcastle are world leaders in renewable energy research too. I mean, they work together on things like the Rhys project, the real tomography stuff at Oldham Mine and Teesside. This is the way forward. Anybody denying climate change is insane, I'm afraid. The scientific consensus is in, and it's happening. We need to fix it. And our commitment to decarbonising and increasing the technology which will allow us to, we can't do it yet, but we're getting there in terms of renewable energy, so that one day we'll be able to do this. But this stuff is expensive. We can only do this if we continue to fix the economy, and this is how we can commit to the kind of research and development which we need so that the UK can lead the world in this stuff, because that's what we need to do.
And the most important thing about our future in terms of energy is to have a very diverse mix of energy to make sure that we are not reliant on one single type of energy. We need to make sure we continue to invest in renewables. I think one of the big things that we're forgetting that no one seems to mention about is what we need to spend more money on researching wave power. We've got, we're surrounded by sea, we're not doing enough there. But at the same time, we also need to move forward and get on with building these nuclear power stations, which will ensure that we have energy security and will keep the lights on for the future. But also, we need to spend a lot more money on scientific research and investment on the next generation of energy, which is fusion, which will solve all the problems. The sooner that day comes, the better. And the most important thing about our future in terms of energy is to have a very diverse mix of energy to make sure that we are not reliant on one single type of energy. We need to make sure we continue to invest in renewables. I think one of the big things that we're forgetting that no one seems to mention about is what we need to spend more money on researching wave power. We've got, we're surrounded by sea, we're not doing enough there. But at the same time, we also need to move forward and get on with building these nuclear power stations, which will ensure that we have energy security and will keep the lights on for the future. But also, we need to spend a lot more money on scientific research and investment on the next generation of energy, which is fusion, which will solve all the problems. The sooner that day comes, the better.
Well, we're in the midst of an economic crisis, so one of the central questions is how we will get out of this crisis and through what growth sectors. And so that's why the Labour Party believes that creating green jobs should be one of the absolute priority growth sectors, not only to change our energy mix in this country, but to actually leave the crisis and reboost employment, which is why the Labour Party is committed to 1 million new green jobs by 2025 in in a range of areas, notably tidal power, as Mr. Martin said, alongside other ones, one that's often neglected, but which has a high energy yield. And the Labour Party supports energy mix as a transition to a greener economy. Roberta Blackman-Woods, also the MP, also supports the reopening of some coal mines for the use of clean coal in the economy, and so we believe that's a way that will bring jobs and growth to the North East, specifically.
I guess I'm last on this one. I suppose it's fitting, being the Green Party. So here's the challenge. 80% of the known fossil fuel reserves that are around the planet, if we're to limit climate change increase to 2 degrees C, 80% of those known fossil fuel reserves have to stay in the ground. Okay? This is what the science is saying. We currently have an economy that's based on consumption of carbon fuel sources. We need to go through a transition to an economy that's built around renewable energy. And we need to do that very quickly. So, if we bring online a whole new form of carbon-based fuels, such as shale gas and coal tar, and exploit new reserves that are now available in the Arctic because the ice is melting, ironically, we're not going to go through this transition onto a low-carbon economy. That's not going to happen. We're locking in the existing carbon-based economy. The way to do that is for governments to invest in renewables. And they are doing that. So it's great to see that solar PV, for example, has come on hugely just over the last 10 years in terms of its efficiency. And so has wind. In fact, we now know, if you look at the extrapolation of the energy costs that derive from these different fuel sources, that the cost of energy coming from wind will drop down beneath the cost of energy coming from nuclear by about 2020. We won't have even built our new nuclear plants by then. So there's just no point at all not pushing our effort into renewable energy. 100% renewable energy. You'll hear people say that's not possible because it can't provide for baseload requirements of industry. Well, actually it is possible. And there's been various studies done to show this again. That's the science coming over. Nationally, across the European Union and across the world. And this is about network development, enlarging networks and diversifying networks. So there's numerous different sources of renewable energy that can be used nowadays. This country has the best wind resource in Europe. We've got wave power, tidal power, geothermal power, which is extremely unexploited in our country. We hardly use it at all. But this could provide something like 50% of our heat energy needs if it was properly utilised. Things like hydropower could also provide the baseload. And of course I've already mentioned solar PV. So please, it's such an important issue. It actually relates to all of our future. Please do take this issue seriously. At the moment, the coalition government, for example, through bringing the infrastructure bill in, is actually going in the opposite direction. They're making it a legal requirement to exploit as much oil as possible from the North Sea, for example. That's a legal requirement. Subsidies have been transferred from wind into fracking, actually going in the other direction right now. I don't see many signs of that changing. So, I hope you found that interesting. I could go on for quite a bit about this, but
I would like to do is ask for each of these representatives to give just one sentence as to why you guys should vote for their party on May the 7th.
the Green Party is the only party with integrated and coherent economic, environmental and social policies.
The Labour Party believes in relaunching growth in this country, but not any old type of growth in the real sector, growth that creates, in the real economy, growth that creates quality jobs and growth that's environmentally sustainable.
The Lib Dems are the only party that can moderate the excesses of the Labour Party and the unfairness of the Conservative Party. We are the only people who can build a stronger economy and a fairer society, giving opportunity to everybody in society.
Continued economic
Sharing flats and houses as a student in your early 20s is great fun. But if you look ahead to 5, 10, 15 years, when you might want your own front door, your own place, you need to think seriously about voting UKIP, because the population of this country is just under enormous pressure. Housing and land are under enormous pressure, and this uncontrolled immigration just cannot continue without having that consequence that you may be looking to your whole adulthood not owning your own flat or house. Just think about it.
Well, I would like to express my appreciation